Welcome everyone to Coaching this Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about regret. Now, regret's one of those things that many people wait until the end of life, or they look at something that they should have done that they may have been procrastinating, and then they say, I regret not doing that, or I should have done this. Similar to how many people regret not buying Tesla, or buying Apple, or buying Windows, or Google, right? For the sake of money, right? We look at something as, it was so successful. Okay, well, we know that those companies are successful today. But when we first started to hear about those companies, do you know for sure that Tesla was going to be successful, that PayPal was going to be successful, that Windows or Zoom is going to be successful, right? Companies that have gained tremendous amounts of money, but we just can't utilize money as a means for success or happiness or regret. Because yes, we can make a large amount of money. We can say, we got lucky on this deal, or we knew what we were doing. But those missed opportunities, let's take away the money aspect and let's put it into our life aspect. You wish you would invest in Tesla. You wish you would have invested in Apple early on, and IBM and Amazon and all those companies, because you'll be rich beyond your wildest thoughts. But what if we said, we're not going to invest in a company, we're going to invest in ourselves? What would happen if we said, I'm going to invest in myself? Similar to how you said, I wish I would have invested in Tesla. It's the same way of thinking. What's beyond that thought? I'm going to invest in myself. And it takes an investment in order for you to realize, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. Similar to how college is an investment, right? You go off to college and you invest in yourself. It is an investment. But once you're done with college, you're like, I did what I had to do. I got my degree, my piece of paper. Now I don't need any more education. I don't need any more guidance. I know exactly what I need to do. So I'm not going to invest in myself anymore. I'm just going to kind of go down this path I've been walking on. And though that's hunky-dory for the scheme of things, it's not going to help us later on. Because regret is going to meet us at the end of life if we don't become aware of what we can invest in and what we can change and what we can make an impact today. And it's important for people to realize that they can do whatever they want in the sense of, is it positive? Is it meaningful for you in your life? Because if it's not, then it's going to be difficult for you to make that transition and then to put the plan into effect. But we have a hard time investing in ourselves. Somewhere, that idea becomes displaced. We say we don't have time. Time is an investment. We don't have time, so we're not going to go to the gym. I don't have time to go to the gym. I'm working and I got kids and I got a family, so I can't be healthy. Okay, so at 60, you can have a heart attack and that's going to be fine, right? Maybe, right? You really have to play devil's advocate here because you have time now. It's just that you don't know how to manage it. You're unwilling to invest in yourself. It's just that you don't realize what you can gain. So we often wait until that regret, until troubles come into our life. And then we say, I'm going to make a change. But in reality, we can make effective change today. And today I'm going to be bringing on the founder of 4,000 Mondays, Jodi Wellman, who's going to be talking about the work she does and how she helps people get out of regret. Because regret is going to be one of those nasty things that we can avoid if we're dutiful and if we're mindful. So let's get into that interview with Jodi and myself.
Just one glass in, you're already on my mind when it gets late.
Welcome, Jodi Wellman, to Coaching a Session. How are you doing today?
Hey, I am so excited to be here with you.
I want to thank you so much for coming on, and I want to talk about the work that you do. So you are the founder of 4,000 Mondays, and for anyone who knows Monday, they're going to say, I don't like Monday too much. But I know the work you do is impactful, so I think they're going to like the work you do. So in your own words, can you please explain the work you do and how you help people?
I would be happy to. And you're right, I will address head on that Mondays are very visceral. And so just off the top, 4,000 Mondays is roughly all we get in life to live. So that's the average number of weeks that we have. It's become my mission in life to help us make the most of our 4,000 Mondays. And so in my case, for example, I know I have 1,902 left, give or take, hopefully give. And in the work I do in waking people up to making the most of those remaining Mondays is I do speaking engagements, I do coaching with leaders and teams and groups, And I have an online course and retreat sometimes, which is super fun. But mainly the way to boil it down is programs and ways to just get us woken up to life, because we do take it for granted because, that's what we're wired to do as human beings, which is really crappy. But I'm here on a mission to try and help us live squander-free lives.
So that squander-free type of thinking or mentality, that's kind of in the line of regret. So we're going into that path of, are we going to live our life to the fullest? And I talk about this quite often on the podcast, and I always share it with coaches because it's a great talking point. There was a man who was dead. He died, and now he's in the afterlife. And the only regret he had was not becoming the person that he knew he could become. So he had so many regrets after he died, but when he was living, he wasn't worried about them. Can we talk about the idea of regret, where it came from, and maybe start to think of the process? How can we stop it?
One of the things I found interesting in doing my own research is that there's just a whole squadron of people out there who are regret researchers, which first of all, I just find fascinating. Imagine at a cocktail party saying that you are a regret researcher. And so there's a whole world of people out there who find it fascinating. And one of the things, this is just a fun fact, I think we'll find it interesting, is that researchers have surveyed people and determined that of all the negative emotions that exist, and there are a lot of them, regret is kind of the best of the worst. So people actually do value the benefit that regret can give them, because it's one of those emotions that does have a little bit of a nudge to it, right? So it's that if we feel regret, and let's be honest, I think you'll agree with me, or you tell me otherwise, most people regret the things that they didn't do rather than the things they did do. Because in psychology, there is this fascinating thing that happens where we can rationalize when we make a stupid decision, right? Like, I shouldn't have taken that job, damn it. And we could try and find ways to understand why we made the decision we did. And we do a good job of glossing over that. But when we don't take a path that we kind of sort of long to take, we often beat ourselves up about it for years and years and years. And a lot of hospice workers talk about people on their deathbeds that they do have this moment of lamenting that, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, right? I should have taken that job in London, or, I wished I had asked Yolanda to marry me, or, all the things that we kind of think, what would that path have looked like had I gone down it? And because we are often wired to ruminate about the possibilities of what could have happened, that's where, quite frankly, regrets, they kind of have the potential to drive us crazy. In a lot of the work that I do this deathbed regret test, and it's not new, right? We've all heard this. Imagine you're lying on your deathbed. What might be the things that you would think of that would give you angst and make you feel like, I wish I started writing that book, or I wished I'd gone back to school, or, we can insert here, there are, unlimited options of things that we have examples of people that feel this way. So I guess really is some of the background. It's that it's usually about the stuff we didn't do that we know we're going to maybe, I call them regrets in the making. And so I want us to become very aware of where are the things right now in life where if you were unfortunately to find out you were dying, that you would think, damn it, I didn't take the chance. I didn't make the move, didn't do it. And so that to me is that's step one, really. That to me is, that's where a lot of the work is, where we can then start to course correct.
Regret is one of those dangerous things that people don't realize is there. Think of it like a snake in a bush, where it's like, okay, I know I have a limited amount of time in this world, but I'm not going to choose to pay attention to that. I hear the rattle in the bush, but I'm not going to not put my hand in it. So it's kind of like we know it's there, but we still walk toward it. We still are curious, like, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing what I want because I have tomorrow. And we always give ourselves this mentality of tomorrow. And I know that's one of the most dangerous things a person can do. I can do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. And they find out eventually a week has gone by, a month, a year, and they have not done it. And it's not until they either have a trauma or they say, I'm going to commit to this, where change starts to occur. And I wanted to talk to you about what type of change will a person have to go through to mitigate regret?
Your question is fascinating because it immediately made me think about this concept in psychology, and it's partly in psychotherapy around, they call them boundary situations. or these moments in life that for many people signify a poof, a wake up. And that could look like a big birthday. It could be like a birthday with a zero, like all of a sudden turning 40 or 50 or 60 or even 30 or 20, who knows? It could be like a rite of passage that might be like getting a divorce, something that's kind of crappy that happens to you. It could be getting into grad school. It could be a near-death experience, which is, of course, the land that I like to play in, because I work with lots of people who have woken up to life because they have found out that they had a pretty serious diagnosis, for example, or they had maybe a big accident and thankfully they recovered. And so these are the moments that can act as these sort of transition points that make us go, whoa, this attitude like you highlighted of, I'll do it later. I want to do it now. I have good intentions. And we all know the road to hell is paved with lots of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to it when I have more time, which, like, let's all be honest, no one's going to give us a big bucket full of time. Or I'll get to it when I retire, or just pushing it down the road. And so for many people, though, the turning point that happens when there's a kind of a big event in life, unfortunately, though, a lot of those events are things that we don't really love. Like I highlighted, it's often something that is a little bit dramatic or traumatic that does spur us to say, wait, well, I may not have as much time as I thought. And so now let me buckle down. That I think is like, that's where I get motivated, is to say, well, like, let's not wait until you turn a big number. What about this year? Or let's not wait until you retire, because quite frankly, you might get glaucoma and a bunch of other diseases that prevent you from going and doing the things you said you wanted to do when you had more time when you retire.
But it's different, though, for every individual, because some people are perfectly fine with saying, you know what, I'll wait to that trauma versus, okay, I'm in my comfort zone. I want to get out of it. I like to scrum it up to New Year's resolution mentality, where we say we want to do something, we start doing it, but then we stop doing it. It's just a mechanism for the body to conserve energy, because the body loves the comfort zone. The body loves conserving energy because that's what it's wired to do. We want to stay as docile as possible in the sense of, okay, we're not raising our heart levels. We're not doing anything too dangerous. We are just kind of staying static. In that state of staticity, which is not a word, but if it is, I made it up. We are going to be not really pushing ourselves. And what I do as a mindset coach is I help people with the quality of their thoughts, which really has them ask themselves some questions, right? Are you happy? Are you really living the life that you want? Are you on the right path? And just to challenge what they're thinking. It doesn't have to be true quite yet, especially when you're younger. If you're younger, you might be thinking you want to be an astronaut. And then you go to NASA and you're like, I don't want to be an astronaut. So then you go, start your own business, walking dogs, and you love it every single day. So you might have this grandiose dream where you're saying, I want to do this, but you do it. And then eventually it doesn't happen because you tried it. Maybe you didn't like it. But then there's also the aspect of you didn't try it, the regret aspect, right? Do we hold off on our dreams? Do we wait until we have the perfect idea of what we want to do? And sometimes I think people, they wait too long, or they don't wait to see how they're moving before they take action. Let's talk about that, right? The two differences between someone who waits because they are afraid for regret, or someone who doesn't wait and then maybe regret a little bit later. And I know it's going to be interesting what you're going to say, because it goes into what you said earlier.
You're super spot on about people. It's not necessarily two camps, because there are, of course, people that, there's a gradation, right? It's like a huge spectrum of motivation and desire. And there are, let's say, a chunk of people, or many of us at different times in life, have these ideas. And there's this concept called best possible selves, where we do have ideas about this version of ourselves. And there could be multiple versions, right? There's a version of you that might be leading a big company, or there might be another version of you that is the very fittest, physically fit version of yourself. And sometimes you can combine those. But what happens is there's the concept on like the best possible selves. It's called lost possible selves. And it's when we come to realize that we haven't really made happen that person we thought we wanted to be. And so your example of the astronaut is a really great one, because sometimes we hold on to notions and like the childhood stuff we can usually get past, right? Like not being in the MBA or becoming an astronaut. We kind of get that those were dreams that might have been a little bit cockamamie to begin with. But when we are adults and we do have this idea that I'd love to be an author, or I would love to be, insert here any dream that someone might have. It could even be, I'd love to be the kind of person that picks up and moves to Europe. That's a version of you that sometimes when we let it go by because of that, I'll do it someday, tomorrow mentality, then we feel like the ship has sailed. Because a lot of people, we probably both work with people who maybe are getting a little on in age and realize, I'm not going to pick up and move my family to Europe now. I missed that boat. And first of all, would challenge that, right? It's never too late to do the thing that you long to do. That version of yourself is still, I believe, largely possible regardless, because it just takes a plan. And most of us are resourceful and industrious enough that if we put our mind to it, we can do it, quite frankly, with the help of a coach who helps hold you accountable. So that's, I guess, the first thought that came to my mind when you're asking this. It's about the idea that we do give up on some of our dreams because we feel like the moment has passed. And I think there's a great quote by John Barrymore that a man isn't old until regrets take the place of dreams. And where is the transition point from a dream you have of a person you could be, or an element of who you could be, the kind of person you are, that you decide that's no longer possible for me? And then, well, first of all, how do you handle that? And then second of all, how do you challenge that? So that's maybe, one component. And then to your other thought about people who do take, quite frankly, a risk, because sometimes it is a risk. There's usually an element of risk that even is very small, but there's the perception that something could go awry, because that's, I think, where the fear does keep us small. And like you said, we do love comfort zones. I love my comfort zone. It's a very, very fleece-lined bubble. Like I love it. And I work really hard to bust out of it. I'm my number one client, right? Most people are afraid, and I'd love to hear from you with all your mindset work. It's the fears of rejection and failure and success, all the key points that make us think that if I take this small risk, even if it feels big, but about applying for that program at school, or asking someone out on a date, or doing a makeover and dyeing your hair blonde, or like it could be minute and it could be magnanimous. All these examples apply. It could be small or big. Again, I go back to, if you get up the gumption and you make the decision that this is the kind of life I want to live, and I'm going to do this one choice right at a time. And that really is all it is, one step at a time. If it doesn't go right, so let's say you do apply to school and you start a program and you realize, oh, this isn't for me. Or you do ask Johan out on a date and he says no. Or you do dye your hair blonde and it looks terrible on you. Like, the good news about that is that the impact psychologically on trying something and having it not work out is quite minuscule compared to the impact psychologically of not trying and wondering what if. That's back to the original part we said around some of the original research. So in many ways, all roads do, in my mind, conveniently lead back to fathom what you want and then find a way to just do it anyways. Give it a try, because if it doesn't work, it'll just lead you to the next path, which is maybe the one that, quite frankly, you were meant to be taken anyways.
Yeah, beautifully said. I love that quote, or just that mentality. Kind of like go a little bit deeper, right? To really look at the root of everything. I've studied psychology for so many years. I can't even tell you how many years as a teacher. I was an effective teacher because I knew how the brain developed. I knew how people moved. And once you know how someone's going to move or think, you can predict what they're going to do, typically, right? Sometimes you're going to have those outliers where if you say, okay, we're going left and you know they're going to go right, you just kind of coerce them. Okay, like, okay, we're going to go right, because they are those type of person who's like, okay, I'm not going to listen to this person, right? So you just trick them, right? So sometimes you have outliers who are not going to follow the group. Not saying that you have to follow the group. It's just that when we look at the human brain, it develops very similar. When we start at a young age, we learn primarily from our environment, where we're looking around at our parents, our friends, our teachers, and it caps around 7. At the age of 7, we have enough information now. We are like, okay, we can finally become someone. And around the age of 7 is where we create our identity. Now, the identity doesn't have to be a good one. It could be I'm a failure. It could be I'm an adventurer, right? It could be I'm going to be a princess, or I'm going to be a prince or a king or the president. We can give ourselves that identity. oftentimes that identity is riddled, cracks, and holes. So as we go on to our teen years, now we're looking for something, validation. How can I make people like me? What do I have to do? Right? How much do I have to conform to get that validation met? So they will forego their dreams. They will forego their ambitions just to fit in. Because if you had some far-fetched idea, some crazy idea that you would be looked at as weird, you would be outcasted, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to allow yourself to do it because the brain, again, wants safety. And the brain can't disassociate safety from people not liking you versus a lion trying to kill you. It can't do that. It's like, oh, this is the same danger. This is the same harm to me. We are living, again, in a modern world where it's easy for us to not look at our safety aspect as, okay, I'm going to die today because something's going to come kill me. I'm going to die today because someone didn't like my picture that I put on Instagram. It's the same thing, right? So we look for that validation. We look for it. And what that does, it creates limits in our life. Many people choose to be below their threshold of what they're able to do, what they're able to accomplish. And they give themselves a hopeful dream, a fantasy, let's say, I'll do it later. They always have it in their mind, but it's not until they realize, okay, when is truly later? It comes, right? And then they have those regrets, but it's kind of like they still are satisfied that they have some of those regrets because they had that peer acceptance. And this is how I help people, especially teens, is that what are going to be the things that you can be proud that you did and then proud that you fix later. And it has to be put in that way because as a teen, if you're familiar with teens or middle school or remembering back your teen days, how defiant we are, how much we know it all, where we don't need an adult. We can do everything. Mom and dad are uncool. We know what to do, right? We have our path. We have our friends and they're everything to us. But you take that away from a kid and they have nothing. So we talk about the path. We talk about being on that path with them, right? How does that look? Tell me about it. Then we insert hiccups. Well, what would happen if your boyfriend broke up with you? Your high school sweetheart. Oh, he wouldn't do that. I didn't say he would. What would happen if he broke up with you? Oh, I don't know, right? We go down that path. Okay, what would happen if you guys get married? What's his personality like? We look at all of this, and it's the cause and effect aspect because I think people are so into, okay, give me immediate gratification. I want to be happy today. I want to be happy now. They don't look at the future. So they would do something like peer acceptance, validation that makes them happy now, but won't make them happy in the future. So regret, right? So we are regretting typically what we didn't do because we were trying to be someone we shouldn't have become or who we were becoming. And it's a wake-up call for many teens. I work with a lot of teens and it's a wake-up call for them where they have an epiphany almost. They're like, I didn't think of that. Of course you didn't think of that because you're so entwined in the facade our brain is giving us of happiness, of joy, of the path, of the desired place that we think we want. And oftentimes our fulfillment is not at the other end of our ideas, our ideals. Not until later in life when we become more mature, now we have the ability to contrast different things. I tried being an astronaut. I didn't like it, right? Now, what do I want? And then we can really say, this is what I'm going to do. But we don't look back at those years of going to school, being an astronaut as, oh, I'm upset that I spent 4 years and I'm $200 million in debt. They don't care because they said that was the experience. Everything that they learned is helping them on their next goal or their next task. So what tends to happen, though, is that people go so far. I spent $200 million. I did all this school. I'm not going to stop now. But they're not happy, not fulfilled. What do you tell someone who's at that point where they feel so stuck that they would allow regret in their life?
Your description is immediately making me think of a lot of lawyers that I work with. It does feel like there's a really repetitive theme with a lot of people that go through the motions of being in law school. And a lot of that is actually because of, quite frankly, parental pressure growing up. And you spend the bazillion dollars, you go through the whole thing, you get into a firm, and you now are in a machine. And it doesn't have to be lawyers, right? It just happens to be pretty common that many people go, whoa, this is not the life I want to live. It could happen in any profession. I work with people that are in the accounting field or insert here. It's any situation someone finds themselves because they either thought it was going to be a good idea, but they realized it wasn't, or someone else thought it was going to be a good idea for them. And so the undoing of that, I think, is a couple different things. There is, it's a book, it's sort of a trade book by Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the number one regret, according to her, is that people on their deathbeds, because she worked as a hospice nurse, felt like they regretted not living a life that was true to them, because they lived a life that was really kind of for other people. And that's a lot of what you're talking about, right? Is that acceptance, whether it's for your peers or your parents or your whoever it is, or your boss. So sometimes it's just a matter, quite frankly, of noting that. They go, oh, wait, I don't want to be that person at the end in palliative care going, wait a minute, this life all these years was swept up in something that I wouldn't have designed for myself, right? So sometimes that's a wake up on its own. But then there needs to be some kind of discovery process. And you probably find this with a lot of your clients. And I find that there is a stark lack of self-awareness around, when you're unhappy, and that's actually a hugely wonderful signal, right? Like discomfort and malaise, or just quite frankly, like some people have experienced it as depression or anxiety or some kind of massive sign and signal, this isn't right. I had it in my own career 10 years ago where I knew I wanted to make a change. I was too scared to make one. I wanted a change to happen to me, which, inconveniently never happened to me. I had to make it happen. But people are often aware of what's wrong, but they don't necessarily know what's right to go to. So it's not like there is this, oh man, I just went to law school. I'm $200 million in debt, to your point. Now I'm trying to become a partner and I'm unhappy, but I know I want to become a veterinarian assistant. Like it's not necessarily, now, to be honest, there are people, of course, that do know, here's what I really long to do, but I can't because there's that limiting belief or story that they somehow can't go and do that. Most often, though, it's because there is this lack of awareness. And that, to me, provides this enormously fabulous opportunity to stop and do some digging. Say, well, what might be something that could bring you joy? Even if it meant that it might ruffle some other people's feathers, even if it meant that it might mean that, the sunk cost fallacy. This is so much of what you're talking about, is this perception I think a lot of us have that I spent all this money in school, or I've spent all these years building my career. I don't want to lose the footing that I have. Even though they're miserable, even though they want to stab themselves in the face, there's still this idea of, but I've invested all this time and I'm now at a director level, for example. And yet, yeah, if you want to make the change that might give you a shot at feeling alive again, it might mean making a change. And yeah, it might mean starting off a few rungs lower on the totem pole or the corporate ladder, or maybe reinvesting, maybe needing to get a loan and go back to school for the thing you long to do. But again, I think is that not worth it, rather than staying stuck on the train that you are on that is sort of like doomsday, So number one, I think it's awareness that a lot of people feel at the end like, man, I wish I lived the life I wanted to live. And number two, if you don't know what that life looks like that you do want to live, golden opportunity to just take a personal retreat day, work with a coach like you or me or any great ones out there to stop and say, what might be something? And let me try and untangle this knot, because that sunk cost fallacy will sink a lot of our boats, because we do believe, well, I'm in too deep. I can't change now. Au contraire, I know so many people in their 60s who've gone back to school and gotten even a PhD. I know a woman who's fabulous who got her PhD in her early 70s. We can do things. We can make changes. We can live the life we want to live. No one ever said it would be a walk in the park. But you know what? I've never, and I'm fact checking myself as I say this, I've never met someone who has shaken things up and made a bold change, even a minor change, who has stopped and said, not that I shouldn't have done that. They're proud usually that they made the change, even if the change isn't perfectly positioned in round one. I'll just give you a quick example. A gentleman that I have worked with made a change from a very successful career where he was caught by the trappings of success, right? So the money, the title, the parking spot, all the things we love, he loved. And I want to make a change. So we made a change. And you know what? He was so excited that he made a change. And he moved over to an organization several levels down. And to be honest, after 3 months, he didn't love it. But he was so energized by the fact that he took control. He was in the driver's seat of his life again, and he really owned it. And he was empowered to be making these powerful choices again, not feeling stuck like he was for so many years as the controller of this company. He said, now at least I know I've got the formula. Now I know I'm going to make another change. And he made another change. And you know what? He's so fulfilled and alive in this new role that he's in. And it wasn't literally the next step he took. It was the second step. But that's the commitment to living a life that you love, is just taking the steps. So that sunk cost fallacy is something that really does hold us back, but it doesn't have to.
And it's like, we are not going to regret the things that we do, but we will regret the things we don't do. So for him, he was going down that path and he was not happy. He's like, okay, I'm going to make a change. The first change wasn't maybe ideal for him. So he's like, okay, well, I can change again, right? That aspect of I can change. And he does, and he finds it. And I think so many people want first place without the training. They want happiness without the work. Looking at relationships, for example, a relationship is a lot of work. It is not easy. But if you want a happy relationship, if you want a successful relationship, you have to have the mindset to put in the work. If you want a healthy body, you have to have discipline. You have to have healthy eating habits. You have to have the mindset of wanting to put in the work. You have to want to change too. Because if you don't want it and that changes for someone else, you're never going to truly give your all to get it. And I find that many people who have this idea of it would be nice never get it. Because yeah, it would be nice, but what are you willing to give up? Your plush life? Are you willing to give up your sense of omnipotence? If you're like a CEO and you're this big head honcho, and then now all of a sudden you're sweeping floors. Be humble, right? That gratitude aspect can really open up who you are to who you can become. What I love about the work I do is that you can shake people, not physically, but you can shake them awake. You can say, hey, you're doing this. It's a blind spot. And we all have them. I have them. That's why I have coaches myself, because there's blind spots that you're not going to be able to see. You're going to think you're doing everything that you're supposed to do because, again, you're in your comfort zone. Now, you might have things or ideas in your mind that you would like to do, you could do, but you kind of shove it off. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I have to go back to school. I'm too old. So we give ourselves a contingency, right? We say, okay, we can't do this because of that, or we need this because of this. What that does is it leads to a prolonged period of nothingness. You can go years without any fluctuation in life. You're at the same company, same position, same happiness, and you might not be happy. But there could be an aspect of you can be living in a cabin with a dog or, with a family and be totally fulfilled. Someone else looking at that, they're going to say, oh, you just live in a cabin. You're not happy, but you have the life that you want. Every day you're excited for something more. Maybe you read a book every day and this is what I want. This is what I want to do. Maybe you're writing a book because you're in that cabin. So you're like, now I can be with my thoughts and I'm not so busy about what society says, about the world will say. Because looking at your client who was the head honcho, right? He was so fulfilled. Now he's like, okay, I'm willing to try and I'm willing to give up what I have. And I think so many people have a hard time relinquishing what they have gained. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to let this go. And a wonderful movie that kind of started my whole mindset journey was called Peaceful Warrior. And there's a scene in the movie, and then there's a part in the book where he talks about his ego. And he's holding on to his ego, and his ego is dangling from the cliff, and his ego is trying to pull him off the cliff. So he falls too. And it wasn't until he realized that he was empowered to let go of his ego, right? But when he let go of his ego, what happened next is that he felt lost. He was like, I don't know who I am anymore now, because I let go of the person who I was building myself up to be. And then now I'm like trying to create this new person. And I had that experience myself where I was going down a path where this is who I should be, right? Building up my ego. And when I finally gave up that ego and I threw it away, oh man, it was like, I don't know, rock bottom depression feeling. It was intense. It was intense because I gave up who I was becoming to form a life who I wanted later on. At the point in time, it was against every norm, right? My friends, family. It was like, I'm only looking at me now. I'm not worried about what the world said. I'm not worried about what I have accomplished. I'm looking at my next steps, right? It was scary. I always tell people, you can make the change by yourself. You don't need a coach, but it's just so much easier when you have a coach, because you go into the unknown. You go into this idea of, am I enough? Can I do this? And there's a lot of limiting beliefs. There's a lot of doubts, and we have to have the courage. We have to have a plan. And you can have the best plan ever. Okay, I got my workout plan. I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. And then sure enough, you go 5 days a week. Or next week, you go 4. The month after, you're not going to the gym anymore. What happened? Right? It's the accountability part. When you decide you want to change, you have to become accountable. But it's difficult for us to become accountable because the brain, again, wants comfort. The brain likes its comfort zone. So it's going to say, well, we don't want to be accountable because we have to leave our comfort zone crazy. So we are going to not hold ourselves accountable. But if we have someone that's going to hold us accountable, a coach, a mentor, parent, friend, that person right there is going to say, hey, aren't you supposed to be doing this? And really making it aware to you, like, okay, I need to make this change, or I wanted to make this change, so I should make this change, versus, oh, my parents told me I had to make this change. My wife or my husband told me I had to make this change. What do you want, right? And getting into the idea of what do you want to accomplish in your life? Sometimes people, they want to accomplish so many different things, right? I want to be an inventor. I want to be a scientist. I want to do this. How do you help people choose one or choose a couple to work on versus saying, okay, you want to do everything? Let's go full throttle and let's do everything you said.
It reminded me of that proverb about he who chases 2 rabbits catches none, you know, and most of the people that I work with that are in soul searching mode, because they just know I'm itchy in my current situation or just downright miserable or some variation of that theme. Most don't have an inkling of what even could be possible. And when they do start looking, sometimes it feels like then there's this burden of choice, or there's just, you know, so many options about, I don't even know where to start. And again, that's when we start telling ourselves, well, I don't have the formal training in that, or they look at a job description and then immediately, I mean, I think all job descriptions are designed to demoralize us because we never feel like we meet the cut. So often, just to be honest, most people are just, I don't know, there's a gaping hole around what I think I might want to do. And that's, again, back to that need for some exploration, which I think is just a super cool and fun thing to do, as long as there's some structure and it feels like it's reined in. And there are people like you've described that have this, I want to do this and that and this and that. I don't know. I can be like that. I relate. I have a lot of people that I've worked with who are like that. There's this term for them. There's a book called Renaissance Soul, which is kind of neat, that it's this idea that some of us just have so many different interests and capabilities. And you know what? We could do technically all those things, now not at the same time. But my belief and my counsel really is that it is about, I like this idea about know for now. So I'm going to back up. Number one is understanding if you are any version of a Renaissance soul, where there could be multiple areas that you could maybe possibly thrive. It's accepting. You could go down one at a time, all 5 of these paths. You want to get into marketing, you want to get into sales, you want to get into PR, you want to go look at all these possible branches on a mind map. You could be successful and fulfilled and happy, that kind of troika in all of them. But then it is about you got to pick a path. Like if you're on the hike, you got to go one way or the other. And so pick one. But this is my encouragement, is again, this idea that this doesn't have to be forever. In the same way that our lives are temporary, our choices can be about dabbling. And I don't know, I find that comforting, this idea that I'm not necessarily locked in, like other than my marriage, which I'm happy to be locked into. I don't want my career to feel like I am tethered. And so you get to say, you know what? I'm going to get to do this for a while. It might be a few years. It might be 20. Like, who knows? This might be the jackpot that I love or I can do this and find it fascinating and meet the needs of curiosity and fun and knowledge acquisition and all the things that might matter. And then, you know what? I'm going to accept and expect that maybe my interest will start to wane. Or maybe that day will come to an end. And unfortunately, maybe they will end it for me. I won't end it for them. Maybe the company will close. Maybe they'll go bankrupt or something. But then you can redirect and say, now I'm going to try sales for a while. And like having the courage to make those course corrections and changes, because again, it is all possible. Like if you operate back to your mindset goal that you work with people on, if you have an attitude that anything is really possible within, obviously within some reason, we're not all going to go to the moon. It is possible to spend some time in PR and then learn how to do marketing and then learn how to do sales, that you could have a portfolio kind of career or portfolio kind of life where maybe that for you is this. Now I'm getting this vision of like a quilt with all the patches that are sewn together. And it could be this most beautiful patchwork of amazingness that, again, on your deathbed, is that going to be something that makes you look back and go, I am so proud. Sometimes it felt like I cobbled it together. Sometimes it felt like I designed it intentionally. But I am so proud of all those experiences that I made happen because I took the reins and I made it possible. So I think it's about acknowledging there could be more than one path. Yeah, you do got to pick one. I mean, otherwise you're just never going to land anything. But it doesn't have to be forever. It could be your stint that you then use and parlay to the next thing. That to me is exciting.
Yeah. And it's like the building blocks. So let's say you want to be a real estate tycoon. You might work as a mortgage broker or just like an agent, like listing homes, right? So it's a process, right? Where you're growing into that role. And it's never too late to grow into that role, but then also look at the aspect of you need to do this in order to get that too. So sometimes you can jump, but you have to be realistic, right? So sometimes you're like, all right, I want to do this, but in order to do that, typically the road is I have to be an intern for 2 years, and that might not be realistic for you because you have a family to feed. So you can't be an intern. Okay, so what's other alternatives to get to where we want to be? So we look at all the different paths that we have. You're right. When clients typically start, they have an inkling of what they want, but it might be a mess. So for example, let's say you have a bedroom and the room, has your favorite hat, but it's a mess in there. Where is it? You have to go through it, right? So you have that hat you want to wear. It's in there. We know it's in there, but we have to find it. And so you have that idea, that dream. It's in there. Sometimes you have to uncover it. Sometimes people that come to me and they're like, I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. I was like, okay, well, let's figure out what we want to do because you have an inkling. It's just that we have to uncover it. And it's amazing the work we do is we help people uncover, okay, well, what can we be doing? And not so much, let's keep doing what we have been doing and it's not leading us to where we want. It's so important that we have to get into that mindset of saying, you know what, I can make the change and I will make the change today.
I love that. And you're making me think about how, and a lot of the examples maybe I've even been using are kind of the big scale ones. And that is applicable for so many of us. And I don't want to overlook what I think is actually more common, which are just sometimes these collection of small things that we do tend to underestimate. The little things let's imagine that you're writing out all the things that might be neat to do. And it doesn't need to be about your identity, right? Like we're talking about big things like your job or maybe where you live or who you might be, connected to or married to, et cetera. But on the list of things that make a life that you might find just delightful, there are things that we don't make time for because, again, back to what you said earlier, we have this notion of I'll get to it later. And I actually liken a lot of this for adults to things like hobbies and like the smaller little things and accomplishments. So the things that, I've always wanted to learn how to speak French. Or, I would love to learn how to use a pottery wheel. Or another client might say, I want to get the trombone out again. All the things that we, again, let life get too busy and we get swept up in the current of it. And yet, what about those smaller things that have the potential to liven us up and give us a new dimension that we, for some reason, have a belief that maybe it's frivolous to spend time on that kind of leisure or recreation, or quite frankly, we just get out of a habit. I mean, I love TV and movies, and I often stop and I'm horrified by myself because of the amount of time I spend in the evening watching a movie when I think I could have done something maybe a little more enriching that got me into the flow zone. Like I could have been doing a painting, regardless of the way we feel guilty about ourselves. That's probably a whole other conversation. My encouragement is to identify what are some of those smaller things that might make you feel like you lived a little more, that you participated in your life a little more. It doesn't need to be the grand scale, massive change. It could be, though, get out your list. If you don't have one, make a list. I have a couple clients they're into finance. So let's just say they love a good Excel document. Okay. And they have a tab on a spreadsheet where they've got listed all the things that they might find fun to do in life. And it's not all fun, by the way. Some of these things are meaningful, like go and read to children on Saturday mornings at the local, whatever. Like they can be meaningful, fun, things that you would long to do. And then on one column, they actually have a number assigned between 1 and 10 in terms of the complexity. For me, it's the dream for my husband and I to live in Paris for a little while. Okay, well, that one's going to be a 10 in terms of complexity. I'm not just going to whip around and make that happen. But there are lots of things that are ones, right? Like, trying a different kind of cuisine, or something that, again, might be about brushing the dust off of an old instrument that you used to play, or registering for an 8-week class that you thought looked kind of cool at the local community center, stuff that maybe you assign out of 3, but then they sort it. They rank, how you can rank your columns in Excel. And then all of a sudden it's this, okay, here are the things from order of possible to, okay, maybe it takes a little more planning. Now you've got a bunch of things that in a random week of your life, you can stop and say, if I want to commit to feeling more alive, so that near the end, or even never mind near the end, this month, I don't look back and think, did I make this month feel like I was alive, like I did my life justice, or did I kind of let it get swept up in the rest of the months that were indiscernible from the month before? Then you have at least a bit of a methodology and a way to say, you know what? I went to that cool new cocktail bar and I'm proud of myself that I did it because it was really cool and I tried this crazy new drink. Or you insert here all the things that might be kind of neat for you. Those are the small scale examples that I believe can add up to make even more of an impact sometimes than the big stuff that we're talking about. I never want to create pressure that we have to make large changes, because it can just be those subtle things to prevent regret.
Yeah. And a small change can be a big change for you. Mm-hmm. Simply waking up in the morning with a smile is a small change, but the impact it does for the rest of your life is so amazing. So we get into that way of thinking, that way of being. And I know the work that you do, with your company, 4,000 Mondays, is only the start. And the conversation that we had today is only the start. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to what we can accomplish. And we have to have some type of direction, whether it be we write everything down, just how you said it, right, where we label it. Okay, this is a 1 in terms of complexity. This is a 10, right? And we kind of label it. The probability of many people doing that by themselves is low. But if you have a coach, and that's an exercise with a coach, oh yeah, sure, let's do that, because you have someone along for the journey. Sometimes when you have company, you're more effective. So I always encourage people to reach out, get a coach. The work that you do, process, and how you help people live a life without regret, Jodi, is going to be something that many people are going to be interested in. So I encourage everyone to check Jodi out. We are going to get some final words from her, and then she's going to share with us how you can find her.
Thank you. Well, I pretty much live over at 4000mondays.com. And so there is a quiz there people can take to determine how alive or dead they are. And that will lead to a guide to an astonishingly alive life. And there's a contact form there if anybody has any comments or questions, but 4000mondays.com. And then I'm on Instagram as well at 4000mondays. So would love to connect.
All right, perfect. And I'll toss all of your information in the description box below so people can easily find you. I encourage people to reach out and find you because our conversation today was full of wisdom, full of meaningful bits of gold, where if you start to take heed, regret is going to be mitigated later on. And we have the opportunity today, because we are listening to this, that means you're alive. You can make change. And it's so important that you make the change rather than regret later on that you didn't make the change. I want to thank you so much, Jodi, for coming on. A huge pleasure.
Thank you so much. Pleasure chatting with you.
All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching the interview with Jodi Wellman and myself. As you can see, that regrets are one of those things that can be mitigated, and learning to invest in yourself, similar to how you wanted to invest in a company that did really well, but it's after the fact, right? You're not after the fact. You're now. So you can be that great investment. And sometimes the investment might be a coach. And I understand coaching might not be cheap. And I understand coaching might not be viable right now, especially since a lot of people are strapped for cash. And it's difficult right now with all the uncertainty going on to invest in yourself. But if you fail to invest in yourself today, what tends to happen tomorrow is that there's going to be decay. That decay happens naturally. Because if you have a home, you bought a home brand new, it's spanking new, everything's new. Something's going to break eventually, right? How long does that take? Typically it takes a couple of years, right? Brand new home, something breaks. It's natural, it's typical, right? The faucet breaks, the handle breaks, the railing breaks. Something goes wrong. Oh, but you had a new house, right? Yes. You might have a new house and you might have less things break than if you had an older home. But you have to pay attention to that, because even though you got something that was amazing, pristine, there's still maintenance that has to happen. And in our life, we have to realize there is maintenance that we have to upkeep. That means getting a coach, becoming mindful, reading personal development, heading over to YouTube, making sure you're up to date with all the latest and greatest tools for you to grow into the person you want to be. Going to Google, searching how to start something. And a lot of people, they're unwilling to start because they don't know how. They have an idea, but they don't necessarily know the process. Maybe you want to start a business. Do you understand that you have to go in, create your business name? If you want an LLC, go through that process, or DBA, depending on what you want, right? You decide how you want to start. But sometimes you need to jump start. And that's where a coach comes in. Doesn't matter if it's myself or Jodi. The coach is going to help you with your goal, with your dream. Going to facilitate that. And it's important that you make sure that you're investing in yourself for tomorrow. Because yes, it might be a couple dollars here, but a couple dollars in the scheme of things are just how we said early on. I wish I invested in Tesla. I wish I invested in Amazon. I wish I invested in Apple. Because you would have spent $30 on a Tesla stock, or $40 or whatever it was. And before they did the split, I think it was like around $900 or something like that. But the highest point it's gotten is over $1,000. That $30 investment that you did, look how much money it created later on, the dividends. And of course, in life, there's always going to be uncertainty. There's always going to be risk, because you don't know you're going to get in the car and go and get in a car accident. Pessimism speaking. We can be optimistic too. If we invest, what are the things we can accomplish? We can start that company, become a national brand. We can start a relationship and be wildly happy, successful. There's so many different things that can happen if we're paying attention. Sometimes we don't pay attention. When you have a coach, they can help you pay closer attention to what is stopping you from living the life that you want. Many times people don't think, hey, I want this in my life and I'm going to do this in order to get it. When you invest in yourself and you start to get an outside view into your life, everything becomes clearer. It's kind of like that bird's eye view of, I'm going to look at the whole picture. I'm not going to just look at my problems. I'm not going to just look at my circumstances. I'm going to look at everything in its totality, because the life that you can create doesn't have to be filled with regret. So if you're willing and you're able, try to mitigate some of that regret. So then you can start to live a life full of fulfillment and joy. It's waiting for you to take action. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com. and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.